So, Mike, thank you so much for being here. This is part of a year-long series that we do, or I should say, a monthly series we do at OhioX, where we host tech talks on all sorts of emerging technology topics. And Chase and his team gave one on supercomputers a few months ago. And this is one I'm looking forward to as well. So great to see some workforce development folks that are tuning in. And Mike, again, I'll hand it over to you at this point, and love to hear what you're going to run us through, and then we can save some time at the end for kind of open conversation and Q&A. So Mike, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Great, glad to be here, Chris. Thank you. So I appreciate everyone joining the conversation today. As you'll see, just to give you a little bit of my background so you have a sense of the perspective that I'm coming from. I am currently serving as the Vice President of Product Strategy and Innovation at Expedient. So I am responsible for all things product strategy, developing our product portfolio, and identifying all of our new digital innovations that we want to bring to market. And I've got a lot of experience here in Ohio over the last 25 years. I spent almost 20 years at Procter & Gamble, a couple of years doing a global architecture and strategy consulting role, and then 4 years in technology strategy and innovation over at Nationwide. But in addition to that, and really the focus of my conversation here today is more on the academic side. So in addition to my day job, I do teach over at Ohio State here in Columbus. I teach an undergrad course called Managing Digital. And I'm also the academic director for a digital executive education program. As Alex was mentioning, it's a program that he and I have had a lot of conversations about where we're going to take that program going forward. But it's a fairly new program that we've stood up here over the last year at Ohio State, and it's one I'm really excited about. And so as we talk through the conversation today, that academic perspective from the work that I do at Ohio State, as well as some of that work experience, will be kind of where I'm going to share from. And so I'm just going to start off with a little bit of level setting. I'm not going to do a lot of that. And this is a topic I could talk for hours upon hours for, and Chris told me I had to keep it to 20 minutes. So I'm gonna share a couple of things really quickly from what we teach at the Executive MBA and the Executive Education program, and then I'm really just gonna kind of get us into a conversation pretty quickly, and we can take that conversation wherever we want to go from there. But when we talk about digital, at least when I talk about digital, there's a key perspective that I am bringing to the table. And I think it's important for us to level set on this, because digital means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? And I would say that as a vendor community in the IT industry, our vendors have actually done us a big disservice over the last 10 years or so with their use of the word digital and the use of the word digital transformation, because they use it everywhere, right? In fact, I always like to tell the story of a few years back. I was in a meeting with a vendor rep from Cisco, and he tried to tell me that installing Wi-Fi routers in our ceiling was going to be a big part of our digital transformation. I'm sorry, that's not what it means to be digital, right? And so when I level set, I like to kind of be clear that what we have done with technology over the last 40 or 50 years has been some really great work, but that work has largely been focused inside of our organizations. It's been focused on improving the operating models, the primary value streams of our companies. It's been focused on things that we can control. As we've started to really move into this digital world, what we have seen is that we've started to do a couple of things differently. Number one, we're adding to the technology this concept of data, and really trying to leverage data as well as technology in unique and interesting ways. But we're really trying to focus now outside the company, right? We're focused on transforming business models and customer experiences. And this is a big shift from what we did previously. And as we'll see throughout the conversation today, that shift actually comes with some fundamental changes in how we do work. And keeping up with those changes has been something that in a lot of people, a lot of organizations has kind of been passed by that. And so I think that's why this topic of upskilling for the digital world is such an important and key topic. So we'll get into that through our talk today. But before we kind of get into that, I do want to, since we've got a small group, I actually won't tell you the answer to this. I'm actually going to ask you, what is the value of digital? And more than asking you to answer that question in the large, what I'm going to ask you to do is answer that question in the context of something we've all experienced, although not nearly enough recently, a dinner party, right? How would digital be involved in a dinner party, right? So I'm going to, if you guys could just go off mute and have a little bit of a conversation with me here. Can anybody think of a way that digital might impact a dinner party?
I can start, Mike, and I'll kind of start at the beginning in terms of like invitations and just telling people about it. So I don't know if that's as far up front as you're going to take it, but I mean, these days, before you might mail a letter or make telephone calls, where
Right.
today it's Eventbrites and kind of the save the dates digitally via email. So I would say from there,
Or maybe even something as simple as a text message, right?
yeah, exactly. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, my wife and I went out to eat recently, and with the COVID virus and everything, people are moving away from menus. They're actually, you're taking a QR code on the table and they're bringing it up on their phone, and that's their menu, which makes sense. It's be a lot less expensive to update that than print out a nice little menu.
Absolutely. What else we got? Who else has other ways that you're using digital?
I'll hop in again.
I can hop in here too. One of my thoughts is that if everybody's bringing something, right? So maybe, you have somebody bringing salad or whatever, dessert, then you can, coordinate that.
Yeah, that's a great one. I saw both Jessica and Jay trying to unmute. Either one of you want to share?
Yeah, I was going to say if it's a real party, you could play Kahoot digitally.
Oh, yes. Excellent. I love it. I love it. Jay?
Yeah, I was going with the ordering the food. So,
okay.
Yeah, he already mentioned that.
Okay.
Trying to think of what other ways. Maybe I was thinking, with ordering food, that way you could, talk about any allergies or anything, any special preparations you need for the food.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to ordering the food and getting people together. How many people have used Open Table, right? You can make your reservation completely digitally, and you can submit, like Jay was saying, those allergy requests in your reservation so that the chef knows ahead of time, right? So that's another great way. Chris mentioned on the chat. Go ahead, Jay.
I said you can get points for it too.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Chris shared a couple in the chat. He mentioned Uber, right? You can Uber to dinner. We'll see another option on the next screen. If you're not Ubering to dinner, right, you might at least use Waze to get there and make sure that you understand what the traffic is going to look like, how long it's going to take you to show up. In today's day and age, right, that dinner party at home, maybe it's online ordering, maybe it's Grubhub, or it's Kroger Click List, or anything like that. Absolutely, another good one from Chris there. And then I guess the only other one that I have on my next screen here that we didn't really talk about is how do you pay for the thing, right? So how do you check your bank account, make sure there's money in your bank account to be able to pay for that $200 dinner or whatever it is? So But a lot of times, right, you could even go as far as to say we can pay for dinner on our Apple on our mobile app, right? We can pay for it with Apple Pay right on our phone and never have to actually get out cash or even a credit card, right? Yang is talking about weather, right? That's another one we didn't talk about, but being able to look a couple hours ahead and know how you should dress for dinner because you can predict what the weather's going to look like. Again, all great instances, seemingly small, seemingly things that were all very, very useful, but we see in this very simple example that digital is embedded everywhere in our life, right? And so as we think about the value of digital, I really come back to kind of incorporating it into three key ways of thinking about it. And this is true. This is one that actually holds true both with IT as well as digital. I think these three are the three key ways of delivering value, but I would say it's better, faster, cheaper. And then the other one I didn't put on here, it's typically more often a consideration internally than it is externally, but safer is the fourth value bullet that I always bring into the conversation when I'm talking about how are we getting value out of technology, right? And better in this context really is, it's pretty straightforward, right? We have a better way of doing things. Uber is a better way of getting from place to place than trying to hail a taxi cab, right? Faster, being able to get information at the click of a button that might have taken days or weeks before. Cheaper, the ability for us to be able to get things for free or very minimal cost that we were not able to do before, right? We talk about things there like free delivery related to Amazon. How does Amazon do free delivery when typically we would be charged $10, $20, $50 to get packages delivered to us? Well, there's a lot of digital that's been incorporated throughout their ecosystem to enable them to get to cheaper price points for that kind of stuff. So there is a key part of value there with digital, but then I would also say that what we're seeing because of the value that's being driven by digital, and even more so the impact of the pandemic, digital is now fundamentally an organizational priority across all industries, right? Everybody's got to be going in this direction. And in fact, I won't read through all the metrics here, but the one I want to highlight for you is this one. 82% of employees say that they expect digitalization to transform their work in the next 3 years. That's significant, right? And partly I would look at that number and say, what are those other 18% actually thinking? I think they might be missing the boat. So digital is definitely something that's impacting every single industry, every single organization. But at the end of the day, one of the things that's important to reinforce is that digital is not a technology issue. Digital is a people issue, right? It's about thinking about our work differently. It's about different set of cultures and mindsets, behaviors and mindsets. We'll see some of this later. It's about putting our customers first in a way that we haven't necessarily always historically done in the technology field. And again, a bunch of metrics on here. The one I'll highlight on this one, right? If you really want to fundamentally understand why we got to continue to upskill and why it's a people issue, 65% of today's children will work in job types that don't exist today, fundamentally due to digital. So this is an important element of how we need to think about this. So as we kind of walk into this concept of digital and we think about how we're going to upskill people in this place, what I'm going to share with you is a little bit of what we have designed and devised at Ohio State. So we've got a framework that we think is helpful and useful for helping organizations on this journey to a digital enterprise. And it starts with envisioning where you want to go, right? We're making the claim here in this conversation that every organization needs to become a digital enterprise, but how do we get there? What does it look like? What are the different building blocks that we need to have in place to be successful? And then when we get there, how are we going to get value out of it for our customers and for our organization? We already talked a little bit about the value components, but we've got to keep value front and center as we undergo this journey. The second element, transformation, right? We're not there, but we have to go on this journey, right? So how are we going to get there? What are the steps that we need to take to go from where we're at today to where we want to be in the future? And then lastly, once we're there, once we are a digital enterprise, we need to be acting differently. What are the new capabilities? What are the new practices that we need to be working with? What are the new mindsets and behaviors we need to be using day to day as an organization and as individuals inside a digital enterprise to be able to be successful? And so those are the three elements that we talk about when we talk to folks in our executive education program. The first one, and just to give you a taste of it, because again, we only have a few minutes, is Envision. And we are leveraging some research done by a group out of MIT that identified these as the 5 most critical building blocks to having a digital enterprise. And this has really resonated with me in my experiences at both Procter & Gamble and Nationwide. I've seen each one of these building blocks in place. I've seen the organization putting these building blocks in place and having success as they did that. And so, excuse me, the first one I'll talk to, and I'll just hit on these really, really quickly, is the operational backbone. That's the core systems that we've been working with for a long time. Think of this as the IT systems. If we go back to our very first slide, it's what we've been working on for years to basically put the backbone in place that's going to support and run our company. It supports that operating model for the organization. But when we talk about this being a building block, we can't just be running on 40-year-old technology here. We've got to have a backbone that is modern, that's flexible, that is able to keep up with the demands of everything we want to do from a digital perspective, because that's the root, that's the core of everything that we do. The second piece is the digital platform, right? That's the part of the technology landscape that actually is interacting and engaging with our customers on a day-to-day basis. It hooks back into, connects back into that operational backbone. It leverages data from the backbone. It puts data into the background, but it's largely designed to work in a very different way. What we'll talk about in a little bit is that whereas that operational backbone, we're really talking about a manufacturing sort of a mindset or a metaphor. We're talking about a big system or set of systems that needs to be stable, it needs to be reliable, but for the most part, we know where we're going. We know what we're supposed to be doing there. When we get into the digital platform, we're talking about engaging with our customers. We're talking about customer wants and needs. We're talking about learning our way into really understanding our customers. And so that digital platform has to be an environment that is flexible, that is able to change frequently, that is able to learn from our customers on a regular basis as we run experiments with new digital products that we might bring to market. So that's a really important piece. The third one on our list here, the external developer platform, that's really taking our organization and our technical landscape and opening it up to partners and customers to do new and interesting things that we could never do ourselves or even envision doing ourselves. And so that is a really interesting and valuable way for us to take what we do well and inject it into a customer journey that maybe somebody else actually owns. A really good example here, and I'll give a nod to my old colleague Jay at Nationwide. Nationwide offers up the ability to quote an insurance policy as an API on its external developer platform, which enables a company like Ford to actually connect into that API and leverage that to allow a customer to actually buy insurance right on the mobile app for Ford, or right in the infotainment center panel in the middle of your screen when you're buying a car, right? You're injecting into that new car buying journey in a new and interesting way that reduces customer friction and can become really, really valuable. So that's an important part of our building block. And then we've got our shared customer insights. Again, connecting with our developer platform, our digital platform. How do we learn from our customers as they're telling us what they want? But more importantly, how do we take what we've learned and make sure that we're sharing it all across our organization so that we don't have to learn the same thing 2 or 3 times? And then finally, that last piece, the accountability framework. This is a new world that we're living in. And so we have to be clear on who's responsible for what when it comes to all of these different elements in our digital enterprise. So that accountability framework gives us the way to give people that local autonomy while still creating that global alignment that's so important across an enterprise. So that's the one of the first things that we do in the envision stage is we have to think through what the status is of each of these building blocks for our enterprise. In the transform stage, I'm going to highlight a couple of things here. Really what I wanted to talk about was why digital transformations fail, right? So there's a lot of methods for how you get from here to there, but according to some research done by a gentleman from right here in Ohio, Tony Saldana, he wrote a book called Why Digital Transformations Fail. He's a former Procter & Gamble executive. Tony identified 3 key reasons. The first was committed ownership, right? You've got to have the right sort of senior stakeholder engagement in a digital transformation to be successful. This is a change in how you're engaging your customers and how your organization is going to market. And it's a change in your entire business model. If you don't have the top of your company engaged, you're not going to be successful in trying to change your business models. So that's first and foremost. The second, we talked about the fact that we don't know necessarily exactly where we're going, right? There's a lot of experimentation that happens in the digital world because we're trying to learn our way into what customers want and need. So we have to be willing to run a whole bunch of experiments and for some of those experiments to fail. So this idea of strategy sufficiency says that we're going to create a portfolio of digital projects and we're going to treat them as experiments, and we're going to assume that some are going to be successful and some of them are going to fail. But in totality, our overall investment in digital will be successful because we have a broader strategy, a broader portfolio that is sufficient. And then that third element, right? This is, we said it early on, this is a people problem. How are we supporting organizations and the people inside of those organizations through that change? And so that kind of puts effective change management at the heart of being successful in your digital transformation. And then again, I could talk for a long time about all of these topics, but I do want to get into more of the Q&A and discussion here. So the last one I wanted to hit on here was the execute. And while there's a lot of capabilities, a lot of practices like Agile and DevOps in the technology world and things like that we could be talking about, what I really wanted to share with you is a perspective on some of the changes in cultures and mindsets that need to change here. And I'm not going to read you through all this. I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but I did want to give you the full slide just so you can have it for your own future reference. But I do want to highlight a couple of key points, maybe one in each column. In the yellow column, one that I'll hide there is we're starting to see this significant shift towards away from projects and thinking of things as having a discrete beginning and a discrete end, into a world where we're thinking about product management. We're thinking about productizing our work. And so that's thinking about a lot more of the overall value creation throughout a digital product's life cycle, rather than thinking of how we're going to deliver a project on time, on cost, and on quality. So it's a completely different mindset that's really important in this space. In the green column, the one I like to point out there really is risk taking, right? We've talked a lot about the idea of experimentation. We've got to be willing to experiment. We've got to be willing to take some risks, and it has to be okay for those risks to not be successful all the time. And so that's a big shift, right? We can't wait for the most senior person in the organization to approve everything. We can't wait for 100% understanding of where we're going. We have to move too fast to keep up with the pace of change. And we have to be willing to try stuff and have it fail sometimes. And then the last thing I would say here in that final column, right, is attitude, right? We really just have to change the attitude that in this digital world, almost anything is possible. There was a good book that was written by the folks over at Singularity University that talked about how we live in a world of abundance now. And if you think about it in the technology space, think about cloud computing specifically. What has cloud computing enabled for us when it comes to compute capacity, storage capacity, right? We're enabling the smallest startups to have the power of one of what was the gentleman's name? He's left now. That has the supercomputers. We have the power of one of his supercomputers just by swiping a credit card, right? With the cloud. And so there is nothing that is impossible in today's day and age. We just have to be able to come up with the right way to do it. So how do we be more creative? How do we think about more of an abundance mindset and really try to push the envelope when we think about what's possible? So those are some of the different cultures and mindsets that I think we need to think about. So to kind of wrap this up, I wanted to just close really with the pitch to say, why do we need to upskill, right? And so if I kind of wrap up what we talked about, I think it's a few key things. Number one, hopefully you've got a sense of this. Digital is a priority across every single industry. So it's table stakes now for organizations, but there's an awful lot of people that don't have the kinds of skills and capabilities that are needed to be successful in a digital enterprise. The second one is that this is different than what has come before. It's not just about new technologies, right? In fact, I gave this entire presentation, and the only technology I even mentioned was cloud computing, and that was at the very end in the context of abundance, right? I didn't talk about IoT. I didn't talk about blockchain. I didn't talk about AI, right? This isn't about technologies, right? But it's about that shift from we're looking inside our company to we're looking outside our company. And it's about the idea that we don't know where we're going anymore, right? We used to know with our IT projects more or less where we were going, right? When we're putting in a new accounting system, accounting hasn't changed in a long time. So we pretty much know what the needs are from an accounting perspective. When we're putting in a new customer engagement system or a touchless order entry system or whatever it is we're trying to do now in the digital world, we're trying to learn our way into what's needed. And so that requires a different set of skills. We have to understand design thinking. We have to understand innovation processes. We have to understand the scientific method, right? So there's lots of different things there. And then again, to kind of close, there's a lot of new skills and capabilities, and more importantly, a new set of cultures and mindsets that are really needed for us to be successful. If we don't upskill our organizations, we're never going to get there. So that's it. I think it went a little over the 20 minutes. So I apologize for that, but love to answer some questions and get into some conversations about whatever you guys want to talk about related to digital.
Well, thank you, Mike. First and foremost, this was fantastic, and I love listening to you talk because as you've went through as your bio, you've been doing it in industry within companies, but you also have this higher ed side as well, and this is a fascinating intersection that I love exploring more. And I think you're right; it's only going to become more and more prevalent, and it's commanding and bringing a ton of attention and conversation, not just in like businesses, but in schools, and then also government. Government's really focusing on this stuff. And there's things out there like Tech Cred and others, because especially a state like Ohio, we're going to lose a congressional seat. And so kind of population trends aren't always in our favor. And so a lot of it is can our industries and businesses, can they upskill for this digital world, as your thing says. But I'm happy to open it up to any questions or comments. I have a couple to start, but don't want to hog up all the time. So I don't know if anyone has something they want to kick off with, or I can hop into it myself.
Yeah, it would be great if everybody could just kind of unmute themselves and come off video, even if you don't have any questions, just so we can kind of have a little bit more of an interaction.
Yeah. So Mike, I'll start as folks can hopefully do that. We covered a lot in a short amount of time. And so, there's some companies out there that have very big IT departments and very big, resources at their disposal. And so when I hear conversations like this, sometimes my mind goes to those kind of small or medium-sized businesses in states like Ohio, which we have a ton of.
Yep.
How in your opinion, if you were talking with a business owner, a CEO, how would someone who maybe doesn't have the resources at their disposal, the Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company, how do you tackle this? Because at the end you mentioned, I didn't even get to blockchain. I didn't even get to IoT. I didn't even get to some of these other things where it can almost seem overwhelming. So how do you start the process?
So I think one of the things that's really important is that I think business leaders, board members, CEOs all need to understand that a basic level of digital acumen should now be required, right? I've heard many leaders say things like, my company is no longer a X company, it's now a technology company. Our CEO at Nationwide said that not too long ago. He said our company is no longer an insurance company, it's a technology company that sells insurance and financial services, right? So you gotta first understand that there's that digital acumen bar, right? So I think that's really, really important. I think the other thing, particularly for small and medium-sized companies, is that there's so much here. I think you have to understand where you drive competitive advantage through your organization and focus your people there. And I think you need to, more than ever, find the right partners to help you with the stuff that isn't part of your competitive advantage, right? And the reason for that is you need people you can trust to help keep up with some of the technology changes, to be able to understand where you can most add the right levels of impact. If you don't have those partners, trying to do it in a small or medium-sized company that has an IT staff of 5 or 10 or 20 is going to be next to impossible. So whether that's a managed service provider or whether that's an infrastructure or platform as a service provider or whatnot, I think you've got to find some companies that can come alongside you and help you focus where you need to focus and let them take care of some of the more basic blocking and tackling and take that off your plate. I think that's the only way that we can be really successful in today's day and age.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts or questions? And I see Yang, you put something in the chat, so you're welcome to unmute and ask, or we can see if Mike can hop into it. But
Yep.
So I've heard lots of people going like to the cloud to store their data. So, and you also mentioned that lots of people are supposed to like, if you're a smaller company, you would rather go for some kind of data service, like what is called SaaS, software as a service company
Yep.
nowadays.
Yep.
So for that, what's the requirement for this small business to have on their side?
Yeah, that's a great question, Yang. So I'm giving another presentation tomorrow where I'm going to get into the technologies just a little bit more. But the way I actually positioned it in that presentation is I talk about 4 layers across the historical IT stack: the business, information, application, and technology layers. And what I see really happening is that all of the focus on digital really is about trying to understand, leverage, and drive transformation in the business and the information layers, leveraging technology to support that, right? And then what I'm seeing is that in the application and technology layers, the major transformation right there is fundamentally moving towards cloud computing as the primary transformation and innovation in the application and technology layers. And I think, to your point, particularly for small businesses where you can get software as a service to take care of most of your needs in that application and technology stack, I think that's really important. I think you can leverage other sorts of cloud capabilities to provide you some new and interesting things there. The big cloud providers have about, between the big 3, right? AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. They have about 1,000 different services that they offer. So there's a tremendous amount of innovation available to you in those cloud providers. And that's where I think I see cloud has really fundamentally become that core infrastructure capability for the digital world, because it gives you access to those sorts of services very quickly and easily, and it allows you to drive that scale as well very quickly and easily. So I would say that's it. The other 3 technologies, right? You may have heard of the term SMAC, and SMAC, if you haven't heard of it, relates to social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. And I would say the combination of those 4 technologies actually was a big enabler for the digital world that we live in today, right? So cloud was a big enabler, but that ability to leverage and extend our technology landscapes anywhere through mobile computing, that ability to bring in a rich new source of data from social media and all of the data that comes in with that, and then that ability to really analyze the data we have inside our company, the data we have outside the company, in an analytics platform. Those 4 really have opened up a lot of new and interesting opportunities as well. We can talk about more about the technology that's coming next, but that's where I would start with.
Okay, good to know. What's the other talk you're gonna give tomorrow? Is that like a open talk, or
I don't remember what it's. I can send you a link afterwards. I don't remember what it's
great
on.
Thank you.
I give a lot of different talks. I just remember I was put my slides
really
together
interested.
for it yesterday. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Mike, can I ask a question from the other side of the world?
Sure.
I loved the 20 minutes. Thanks, mate. I enjoyed it. It was worth missing the football on the other side. I agree with you. This is a holistic journey, and it's touching every industry. We're working with construction and engineering to put data and digital in at an elementary level, at apprenticeship level, and so on. We've got to stop talking about silos, because business doesn't work in silos. You've got to take a holistic view right across this for it to work. But how do you, and we've talked about this before and we're working on some stuff, but how do you get decision makers to really understand that they need to upskill? Because that, to me, is one of the huge barriers that's actually, that people are hitting their heads off at the moment. Because they don't have enough knowledge, they don't have enough intellectual horsepower to make the right decisions. And at the moment, they make lots of wrong decisions because they don't have that knowledge.
So I think one of the things that I think, and it's maybe a little bit of a different angle or approach at this, Alex, but one of the things I think is actually really important is that I think that we need to start to think about putting in some requirements on board of directors for digital knowledge on a board of directors, right? I think having someone on a board of directors that comes from more of a technology background and can help bring that digital perspective to the table is a way to help hold senior executives accountable in a way that it's hard to do any other way, right? And so I think that just like we started to hold board of directors accountable for certain levels of accounting knowledge as we dealt with Sarbanes-Oxley and some of the different accounting rules, I think it's time for us to hold board of directors accountable for a base level of digital acumen. I think that's a really important way to do it. I think
sorry. The issue, and we're particularly seeing a senior level now, is that you can't really teach the technology on its own. They actually have to understand the new business models that might be available. So you have to train in business models and technology at the same time, so they can understand where the technology fits in the new business models. And then they can understand at the same time the opportunity that the new business models may have.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it actually takes me to another angle on this that I wanted to share, which is I think when we talk to people about in the business world about technology, I think what we've got to do is stop trying to get them to understand the details about technology. And instead, what we've got to shift the conversation to is what's possible. What is this new technology enabling us to do that we could never do before, right? Fundamentally, as a senior executive, as a CEO, I don't necessarily care how blockchain works. What I actually care about is what does blockchain enable me to do that I could never do before? And then I need to be able to understand how to transform business models through my corporate strategy and my MBA courses and everything I need to do to be a good executive, right? And I need to be able to put those two things together. What does technology make? What's possible? And then what are the ways I'm going to transform a business model? That's how I think we need to start to do this going forward. But as technologists, we don't tend to talk about technology that way, right? We get too far into the bits and the bytes, and we never bring it back to that level of what is this technology enabling us to do that we couldn't do before? Agree or disagree, Alex?
No, I totally agree with you. To me, it's all about using technology to make people and business smarter. And then, you know, what we're seeing as well is, and Mike knows this, that the climate solutions education product we developed about 4 years ago is now going through the roof. And that's going to be another board issue for everybody going forward as well. It's a difficult place to be a senior exec, but unless you're willing to put some skin in the game and really start relearning, then you ain't going to be a senior exec going forward.
Exactly.
I totally agree with you, Mike.
All right, we got just a little bit more time. Anybody have, we got time for maybe one or two more questions?
Going once, going twice.
I don't know
Mike-
if
Oh, Evelyn, please go ahead.
Just under the gun.
Perfect.
I apologize. I missed the first half of the presentation, so I hope that it will be recorded or shared out. I apologize. I didn't see this event until too late and was already booked, so jumped into the last like 15 minutes or so and may have missed some things. But I'd love to connect around tech apprenticeship. I'm at Apprenti. We are the Department of Labor's tech sector lead for apprenticeship. We have multiple roles, career pathways, stackable credentials, work with boot camps and training programs to put that together into a formalized onboarding program for industry partners so that they have support to bring in new tech talent. We work with Amazon and Microsoft and Chase and all kinds of people from that side down to small startups on bringing in new tech talent and onboarding them successfully so that they can be credentialed as equivalent to a four-year degree by the Department of Labor in the same way that colleges and universities credential colleges four-year degrees coming out of departments and help those pathways forward. But I'm excited to connect and just shared my LinkedIn. Hope that we have it recorded, but happy to be a resource.
Yeah, and like Evelyn mentioned, one of the things that I have loved about Ohio, right, is that we do have a lot of companies that are trying to help solve this problem. Companies like Apprenti or up in Cleveland, Tech Elevator, or down in Cincinnati, Max Technical Training, are just a couple off the top of my head that I'm familiar with. But we also have a lot of wonderful support from the state in support of those programs and driving those programs like the Tech Cred that helps fund the sorts of things that Evelyn was talking about for businesses and organizations to get reimbursed for those sorts of programs. So this is from an upskilling perspective, this is an incredible state with an incredible amount of support. And so for us, there's really no excuse, right? I envision a world where Ohio is one of the world's leaders in digital, right? In 5 years from now. And so the only way we're going to do that is if everybody leans into it and actually brings it into their organizations and brings it to life.
Absolutely. Well, Michael and Evelyn, that's probably a great place to end this conversation on. And so, Mike, thank you so much for taking time to put this together and joining us this afternoon. And thank you to so many people for joining. And I believe our first person from Europe for one of these. So that's always we now have something to kind of brag about for future ones and see how many countries we can get. So job well done, Mike and Alex. Thank you for spending some of your evening with us.
Thanks.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it, Mike.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Mike. Bye, everyone.